Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Making It After 40 podcast. I am your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. This week, my guest is actor and solo coach, Heather Dowling. Heather is an actor who got her start at 39 years old. Yes. She always wanted to be a performer, but never saw it in her future until one day in her late 30s, she and her husband picked up and moved to Los Angeles for his career. There, she found inspiration to give acting a real shot and soon found her community and her calling in writing her own solo shows, which led to helping other creatives create their own solo shows. I had such a great time chatting with Heather. She and I hit it off right from the start. She has so many good insights, is a proud union supporter, and has so much life experience to share with you all. So please enjoy this conversation with Heather. All right. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. It's so nice to meet you.
I know it's so fun to see your face in person after listening to all these podcasts and knowing all the circles we travel in common, but have never intersect.
I know that's been like one of the most fun things about this podcast is like realizing how many connections I have to other people and like how small this industry, but also Los Angeles is
right
as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, yes, there's a churn of millions and millions and millions and millions, but as it boils down, the number of people that stick and stay, that little pod kind of congeals and it gets to where, I mean, it's unbelievable. Just last night I was at a friend's birthday party and the people she invited that I didn't know, I discovered multiple overlapping connections just in that one room. And it was like, wow, this is crazy. And this wasn't even an actor writer party. This was people that are in food service. They own restaurants and they do wine and stuff. And it was crazy how many people we had in common.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just never know where you're going to run into people. I mean, I had the experience, this was 10 years ago now. I used to manage California Plaza in downtown Los Angeles. And they have this like big water feature that also doubles as a stage during the summer, and they have all these performances during the summertime. So I went with my friend who was my administrative assistant at the time, and her boyfriend was having a show there. And so we went to the show and we're backstage, and I look over and I see my neighbor from high school. She we carpool together. We're good friends. I was like,
oh my God.
She's a twin. So I was like, Kelly. And she's like, no, Colleen. I was like, Colleen, what are you doing here? And it turned out her, I hadn't seen her in years and years and years. It turned out her then husband was one of my friend's husband's artist, because my friend is a music he owns a music studio, and so it was one of his artists that was performing at the show, and so she was there. It's funny.
Crazy, right? I was on the picket line with a guy that I haven't seen since my sophomore year in high school.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's like a big time writer now in Hollywood, and I knew that because we're connected on socials, but I had not seen him in person since, we won't say the year, but it was a really long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was so fun to reconnect.
That's so fun. That's cool. Yeah. I mean, and that's just been such a big thing right now, the writer's strike. I do work a day job, so it's been so hard for me to get out to the picket line. And I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm going to take some PTO so I can go walk the picket line. He's like, okay, so you're going to take time off your job so you can go picket and strike. And I was like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's how this works. Because right now, you have to have another job in order to be an actor. And even it was really interesting. I'm blabbering on, but I was listening to a podcast where they were interviewing a showrunner who's based out of New York, and he was saying like one of the things that's going to make this strike sustainable is that the way that the mini rooms have been working and the contracts have been working, all
Yep.
these younger writers are so used to having another job. So in terms of like sustainability, they're used to like having another job and then their writing job. They can pivot and they can like work their other job while also striking. So
Yep.
it's fine. They're gonna they're gonna be
Yeah,
able
they're
to
fine.
like
Well,
wait this out.
and what I found is, some of them on the line are saying to me, I wasn't making anything anyway, or they slashed my pay
Yeah.
in half anyway. So how
What do
much
they
is
have
it
to
really hurting
lose?
me? And that's a lot of my actor friends as we prepare. And I hope we do strike. I voted yes, and I
Yeah.
hope everybody's voting yes.
Yeah.
That was my thing too. I'm like, what I've been learning about the actual earnings of my friends who I aspired to be. So my friends who are
Mm-hmm.
working actors, that I thought that based on how much I saw them getting out, how much they were on set, that if I got there, right, I'd be set. Well,
Yeah.
what I'm learning about these actual contracts, what I've discovered is, they're not making a livable wage either. So
Yeah.
it's the games that have been played with, resetting credit levels, whether it's, series regular versus recurring versus co-guest, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
then what they're doing with the smaller episode arcs and all of that. And then so much stuff going on union and then no residual. I mean, we all
Yeah.
need to be out on those picket lines. So I say, Lisa, welcome if you can take some PTO. And if you can't, you've got to have grace for yourself too, because it is the reality that those of us creatives who've chosen to call LA a home, it is a hustle and it is a grind just to survive here. That's just the truth. So
Yeah.
I have an awful lot of friends who want to be out there with me every day, and they can't because they're
Yeah.
working regular jobs. And I just tell them, look, support with your social media, support to educate, tune in to the SAG meetings,
Mhm.
tune in so that at least you're knowledgeable. And when you're engaged in conversations, then you can speak up, right? And you can talk
Yeah.
knowledgeably and give good examples and stuff. Because for some
Yeah.
people, that'll be what they can do, and that is equally as important, I think.
Yeah.
So,
And, one of the things that they've said has been really unique about this particular strike is that they're getting so much support from all the other unions,
yep.
and not just actors union, like the SEIU, the like janitorial, the food processing, the Teamsters, like they're getting so much
Do you know
support
that those
because
people, the food and the industry, the hospitality industry support union, their contract is up the same day as SAG and the DGA.
oh my
So
gosh.
if they, I mean, the city could get real quiet all of a sudden, could get very dead.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
pretty intense.
Things could shut down, and it actually won't be quiet. It'll be really noisy with a lot of picketers, but the business
Yeah.
could really be dramatically impacted. It's an interesting time for sure to be in as an artist, right?
Yeah. I think people are just tired of being told that they're worth less and that they don't have value. And we're all sick of it.
And I think, it's to some degree with actors because we've been in a race to the bottom for so long, money wise, that
Uh-huh.
there became almost a badge of honor of not the struggling, but the being resourceful enough to figure it out, like having all the different
Yeah.
side hustles and doing all the different things. But the reality is, and the quality of life of that people are experiencing is terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
And the sacrifices they're making for their family and all these things, it's kind of, but it's almost like we got used to it. Like we got used to that this just is the way it is. It's always going to be a struggle. There's too many people. There's not enough jobs. It's like, no, when I look at the contracts, even the jobs that are there for the really good people that somehow slice through the competition, they still can't qualify health benefits. I don't know if the strike was where you wanted to go first, but my
Yeah.
my my good friend Deep is an incredible actor. He was on set so much last year. I thought that's what I want, right? 24 jobs last year. A combination
Oh
of
my gosh.
union commercials, network TV, and streaming projects. 24
Uh-huh.
jobs. He didn't make enough money to qualify for SAG's health plan.
What?
He didn't make enough money to qualify for SAG's health plan. So that tells you
Holy
the games
crap.
they're playing with the co-stars, the residuals that aren't getting paid out from the projects that move over to streaming. It points a lens on all of it. And he's working full time as a graphic designer to support himself
Yeah.
and to care for his family. And So something's got to give, and I think that's this moment with our industries. Like something's got to give. The tech companies have been running it like we're a tech company for too long, and finally we've hit a wall with that, and it's got to change, I think.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's just not sustainable. And
Mm-mm.
I don't know, either people will leave the industry, like there will always be more actors, to be fair.
That's true.
But I I just think it's gonna become a thing where, like, I don't know. I don't know what to think about it all, to be honest. I think the biggest hit is the writers, because if you don't have writers, then you don't have content. And that, I feel like that's kind of like the key to this all, is that the writers getting what they need. And if you can get
Yeah,
that piece in, then I think everything else falls together.
I agree. I think the WJ has been extraordinary in the way they've led the charge, and they've been so smart and organized from what they learned back in 2007. And as a result, I think they're setting a really good model. And I do think a
Mhm.
lot of the gains they make will inevitably kind of spill over and impact the way other contracts are negotiated for everybody else. At least that's what I have my fingers crossed for, at least.
I sure hope so, because, like, as much as I'm grateful for having a day job that, keeps the roof over my head and pays my bills and allows me to take acting class and all that stuff,
Right.
I still want to be able to, like, make money from making art.
Mhm.
And right now I'm just not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And there's a reality of energy too. When you're hustling so hard just to stay here, it becomes a question of where do I get my creative fix? Where do I find the time to put into
yeah.
those creative hours to nurture that part of me that is so clearly what I want, or I wouldn't be here in the first place. Right? Like
Right.
if that wasn't it for me, I'd get the heck out and go somewhere and get
Yeah.
a more predictable 8 to 5. So it's it's an energy question too.
Yeah, it really is. And that's kind of where I was at in, like, 2012, 2013. I was feeling like, if I'm not doing any acting and I'm not, like, trying to do something related to the industry in Los Angeles, then why am I even here?
Yeah, exactly.
And so then I kind of started
Exactly.
taking class again, and, like, I think it was like 2014. That's when I started up with, I think it was 2015. I started up with Second City again. But yeah, it was like there was definitely, like, a moment in my life where I think most actors have that time where it's like, okay, well, what am I doing? And, SAG has, like, some time management classes and stuff like that, which I think are really helpful, like, to help you kind of refocus your career
Yeah, for
and
sure.
prioritize the things that are going to feed your creative soul so that it does become sustainable.
Yeah. And I think that's why community is the most important thing. I belong to a group of pretty extraordinary actors that when the shutdown happened and all the classes started to go away, we all knew we weren't going to make it long if we didn't have chances to be actors. And so
Yeah.
one of my friend Diane Yankirk, who is just unbelievable, she's just a force. She started running classes every Monday via Zoom, and we started giving ourselves assignments. And sometimes it's a self tape, sometimes it's an in person Zoom audition, sometimes it's we pull sides for each other and we transcribe from
Yeah.
TV shows and all these things. And we've been doing it since the shutdown. So I know for me, community has been the place where I've been able to keep being reminded of why I'm here, why I do, what I love about it, where I need to grow with it, where I need to learn more. Um, that part is kind of what keeps me going. And I was taking some online classes with BGB Studios too, and
Mm-hmm.
that was very filling as well. I felt so actory. It felt so
Yeah.
good to just be an actor. It felt like there was no other agenda other than just to be and to act, and it was so fun. So I appreciate those moments when they show up, because they, at least for me, they occur as few and far between. And so that's, for me, one of the biggest challenges is to not get caught up in, as you're talking about, the other things we do to get by,
Mm-hmm.
and to cut out that core time for your artistry. Like that's one of the things I'm still disciplining myself to do, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. So community can
Yeah.
really pull for that in a way that I think doing it alone is challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that community is so important. And it's so easy, especially in this city, to not prioritize the community because it's, there's the driving and there's the parking and there's, I don't know.
That's all you have to say. There's the driving and there's the parking. I was trying
Yeah.
to go to an event. I was trying to go to an event that I'm part of. So and we can talk more about this, of course, but as a solo coach, I've
Yeah.
been coaching a dozen shows in the Hollywood Fringe Festival this year. And the other night I was down there at an event and I wanted to join in the festivities. And I swear to you, it took me 45 minutes in that neighborhood to find some place that I could park. And if I wouldn't have found that spot when I did, I was ready to just blow the whole thing up. And I
Yeah.
knew I had people waiting for me and I knew I would regret it if I didn't get to see them. But I was like this close to just saying, I don't like anybody well enough to keep driving around these blocks trying to find somewhere.
Yeah.
to park. It's just not worth it.
That's so funny. Well, why don't we go, let's go back, and why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey to get to where you're at now? I looked at some of your self-produced content and I checked out your IMDb page, but I really don't know anything about your history. And I know we have people in common, and I'd love to hear about your story.
Well, it's a doozy. So my husband and I moved to Los Angeles 12 years ago now, and we came for his career. So my husband had been working in television production in Arizona, actually. So he had been trained to do that. He went to the Walter Cronkite School at Arizona State, and he's can do all of it, right? He can do recording. He's a shooter. He's an editor. He's a producer. He does all of it. But we kind of maxed out what he could do money-wise in Arizona. It was as good as it was going to get. And I also knew that what he really loved was film and television, and that that if he wanted to work on the kind of things that excited him, it was going to have to be either LA or New York. And his brother was in LA, and his brother's a screenplay writer, has been fighting the good fight for a long time. This guy, he's amazing, Timothy Dowling. And so we made the decision to move to LA. And the thing that did was it meant I was unemployed for the first time since I was 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
I had never not had a job since the age of 14. And part of that was at a very early age, all I did is want to be a performer. I mean, I was the kid at 3 that's up on the kitchen table with a banana singing a song, always wanting to be putting on shows for the family, that kind of thing. Did tons of theater in high school. Even in my 20s, I was doing community theater. But when that time in my life in high school came around where they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you say, I want to be an actor and a writer and maybe a dancer too. They go, right. But what are you going to do to make money?
Yeah.
Especially when you're growing up in Colorado, that isn't exactly a town that's steeped in the entertainment industry. And I came from a family where just, getting by, it was about what do you do to take care of your family and get by, and my mom was a really talented writer. My dad played music, but it never sustained. And my mom, this is kind of a tangent, but at one point she was writing romantic intrigues and historical romances for Harlequin and Dell. And that was exciting for her. She made that transition later in life. So ironically, very much like what happened to me, she got to do some of that. But even that, it turned out to be very much like this journey, being an actor or writer in this industry, turned out to be quite a grind on her.
Yeah.
Anyway, so talk about a tangent. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Point is, nobody was saying sign up for fine arts school, and that's all I wanted. I dreamed of going the American Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts in New York, and money-wise and skill-wise, that was not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up having, over the course of my life, I've had more than 35 jobs. In 35 years, I had that many jobs.
Holy cow.
Yeah, because I tried to find a way to go to college by joining the Navy. Incredibly.
Oh.
Yes. Because I didn't want to go into debt. I didn't want my parents to go into debt. I also didn't want anybody to tell me what to do. And the few places I had scholarships didn't sound good to me. So I was like, wait, if I take this Navy contract, they'll pay for my college. I'll be earning a paycheck the whole time. And then I can pick whatever school I want and go wherever I want. And then if I want to be let's just say it didn't turn out. I have a one-woman show all about that.
Okay.
So that's how it happened. So here we find, my husband and I find ourselves in California. I'm unemployed for the first time since 14. We go meet his brother out for drinks at a place called Local Peasant on Ventura Boulevard. And I'm stunned. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I literally have nothing to do. And my brother-in-law said, didn't you always want to act? You always wanted to write. You said that when you were young, that's what you wanted. Because I'd always share with him how much I was amazed at the life he'd created out here. And I was like, are you crazy? Because between me and you, Lisa, I was 39 then.
Oh,
And I'm like,
wow.
are you nuts? I'm like, you can't just show up at 39 and say, hey, I've done some community theater. Give me a job. Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
He goes, you know what you could do though, is you could write a one-woman show about all the crazy jobs you've had. Because I don't know anybody who's had as many crazy jobs as you. Fast forward a year, let's see, I guess it would have been later that year that I ended up going to some free improv classes. And then all of a sudden I found myself at Groundlings. And all of a sudden I found myself in an on-camera class. And
Oh my
in
gosh.
2000 or in 2015, I premiered my first one-woman show, Unemployed Finally, the story of a woman with more than 30 jobs and 30 years before doing what she wants.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was awesome. And I got to tour it for
That
like
is
2 years,
awesome.
and it introduced me to that whole world of performers. And, in the meantime, I got a lot of great training as an actor. And so I've been all in ever since. It's been something else, let me tell you.
That's awesome. Wow. I mean, what a big leap.
Yeah, and there was this moment of like, am I just having like a massive midlife crisis, or am I really going to do this? But there was something about being around. I was, thanks to my brother-in-law and the people that he's known in California forever. He went to USC. He's got a lot of friends that are still
Mhm.
here, working at varying degrees, of course. But I started to get that it was kind of normal to work in the business here. Like there were a lot of people that were doing some
Yeah.
kind of work in the business, like that it wasn't this, you get discovered and you make it huge and you're, Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's just a lot of people, like even background work, people that were making a living working background or doing stands. I was like, there's a whole universe that I didn't know existed. And so I started to think, why not? I was like, I've done a million jobs I hated, never made as much money as I wanted to anyway. So
Yeah.
what can it hurt, to just try? And I'm thankful that I did, the things we were talking about earlier when it comes to the business itself and our industry right now. All of that's true. It's every bit as hard as everybody says that it is, and that my
Mhm.
family wasn't wrong. My guidance counselors weren't wrong. It is every bit as difficult, but I've found that it's equally difficult to force yourself to do things you don't want to do for the sake of just a paycheck, even if it's a
Yeah.
paycheck you really need. So if I'm going to work this hard, and if I'm going to struggle, I want it to be towards something that I really care about and excites me and lights up the best parts of me. And I feel like that's what acting and writing provide for me. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have gotten so invested in writing had it not been for my one woman show. And then from the first one, the part that impacted audiences the most is I shared about the trouble my husband and I had getting pregnant, my infertility issues.
Yeah.
And that was, of the 4 or 5 minutes I talk about it in Unemployed Finally, that was the thing people asked the most about. And I was like, wow, people really need to talk about this. And I
Yeah.
started finding out how many people have been struggling with that issue. So then my second show was 4 years later. It was called Fertile, a conversation about expectations of procreation. And that one's my heart, because that one is where I really got to make a difference for other people with that show. And so I'm proud of that one. And then that launched me as a solo coach, because both of those shows went really well. And then I started coaching people how to write their own stories and to direct them on stage with in partnership with the woman who did both of my shows,
Yeah.
Jessica Lynn Johnson at Soaring Solo Studios. And so now she and I, we have a bevy of brilliant solo performers that we're helping them tell their important stories that can impact other people too. So that fills my cup quite a bit when I don't get to be on set as much as I'd like.
Yeah, yeah. That's really incredible, and I think that's just it when you tell stories that are so unique, and so specific, you don't realize, and especially with, any sort of fertility stuff, whether it's miscarriage or not being able to get pregnant, nobody talks about it. I think that's starting to change. A lot more people are talking about it, but for
Thank
so
goodness.
long, yeah,
Yeah.
for so long, so many people just didn't wanna talk about it, and it was like
It's so sad. That's what I address a lot in my shows, because, when I started to have trouble, all of a sudden in quiet conversations, I started to hear from my friends about problems they'd had getting pregnant, about miscarriages, about thousands of dollars spent on in vitro things like this.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I was like, why would you go through this alone? I was right here. I would have been there for you. I would have done whatever I could to support you. Why don't you talk about this? And there's like such a weird shame about it. Like there's this expectation that you should be able to, and that there's something wrong, and or you waited too long, or whatever it is. And it's just, I'm just so glad, like you said, that finally people are starting to talk about it, because nobody should have to go through that alone and feel like it's a unique experience, because it ain't. It's so common. It's so everyday for so many people. And I think the more we could talk about it, the more information gets disseminated, the more it helps people make choices and to feel empowered to do that. So yeah, that's why Fertile was a work of the heart for sure for me, to get that out there from my personal story to a story that would hopefully help other people.
Yeah. And then it set you up for this like situation now where you're able to solo coach and help other people bring their stories to life, which I think is, I do feel like for a while, and maybe it was like in the 90s and the early 2000s, solo shows had a bad rep of like being like, I don't know, self-indulgent or something. But the ones that I've been seeing recently, we had Amy Enriquez on the show with her one woman show, Lightweight. She talks about her experience with her eating disorder and how she spent a year in recovery. And it's incredible. And it's helped so many other people who have their own battles with eating disorders. And even if it's, maybe it's not getting people into recovery type of thing, but those who have battled it themselves, seeing themselves reflected back is such a huge healing experience.
Absolutely. I've seen it over and over and over, because there's something, listen, if you've gone through a really challenging or traumatic experience in your life, it's one thing for people to give you advice, right? Like everybody's got advice. But when you just hear someone authentically tell their experience and how it was for them, I think it's so much more accessible to let yourself just take it in and then hear what makes a difference for you from what you're hearing, versus like some one size fits all answer, because there isn't one. So one of the shows I directed at Fringe last year, I'm so proud of it. The show is called Asexuality, a solo musical. And it's by the incredible Rebecca McGlynn. And Rebecca had just transitioned.
Okay.
And I knew her before she did. And the whole musical was really going through the journey ever since childhood of what she had gone through to get to the other side of that and what she'd encountered. And it was very lighthearted. There was a lot of very funny stuff.
Yeah.
And then it got to the stuff,
Yeah.
And the thing that I saw, and it was such a perfect example of it, the comments that people made coming up to her after about, and I even said to her, I really believed I was an ally. I really believed that I could be with anybody of any gender expression, of any sexual expression of it, like, right? A complete ally, I thought. But hearing her story, it just gave me a deeper cut of what I did not understand about what people were experiencing. And if they had gone through that process, what kind of a life that had been. So it helped me experience a level of empathy that I don't think I could have gotten to any other way.
Yeah.
Because it was so authentic coming out of her. And she kept hearing that again and again. And she had people who came out that had been in the closet. She had people, sending her all these anonymous messages saying, I told my parents, or, I got into therapy, or, I'm finally gonna explore, transitioning or whatever, or, apologizing. She even had people write to her and apologize and say what they had believed about trans people. And that after seeing her show, they were so moved that they get it now, and that they have a whole new point of view. I mean, that's the kind of like, how do you shift points of view like that? And that's a really, and she won the whole thing last year. She won the entire Fringe Festival. She won Top of Fringe and Best Premiere. And I'm a huge fan of solo theater. Listen, the bad reputation is somewhat deserved. Sometimes artists, especially if they don't have any guidance, if they don't have a director, they don't have a dramaturg, somebody that's kind of keeping the reins on, it can definitely occur like therapy on stage, and nobody needs it. But if it's done well, it can be so impactful. So I just have so much respect and courage for people that take it on. and guiding them to get the best version of it for them. And we have people that aren't even actors that
Yeah.
just have something they really want to say, and they find this a safe way to say it. So it's a weird, wild, wonderful format, and I stand by it.
So do you guys have like a class where people come and do a class to kind of like get the outline or kind of like workshop their idea or their story a little bit, and then from there they can choose to like work with you as a coach? Or do people just come to you like, hey, I'm going to do a show, I need a coach, and you're it?
It's both. It's both.
Okay.
So at soaringSoloStudios.com, if you go, there's like, Jessica has compiled, she's been 20 years she's been at this. So
Okay.
she's got endless free resources compiled. She has on her YouTube channel, she has, I want to say like 150 meditation and writing prompts just to get you started. So
Oh,
like
wow.
if somebody has an inkling of, I think I want to write a show about this part of my life or this thing that happened or this historical figure or whatever, those writing prompts can get you in a space where you're, starting to get what we call mosaic pieces, like a chunk of something written, right?
Yeah.
And then she has free classes that happen they used to happen live every at least once a month at the Whitefire Theater in Sherman Oaks. We would do it on Saturday mornings. Now she does it
Yeah.
on Zoom one Saturday a month. It's a 2-hour free class that people log in for. And then she does a free write Friday that those times change, but people log in.
Yeah.
She again walks them through a prompt, gives them some notes about writing for solo, and then they practice. And
That's
then
really
so it's
cool.
we as a studio give a lot of stuff to get people going. And then once they reach a point where they're like, oh, I have all this stuff, I want to, now what?
Yeah.
They'll either start to work with us one-on-one, or we also do group coaching, because cost-effective wise, you can do group coaching where you're all together.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot that way from watching other people make choices and start to structure their own shows. And then there's like power pairs where we'll power up two artists that kind of have similar themes or at the same place so that they can work
Okay.
together. So we have so many options. I'm going to be trying to get what I call the character gym going here soon. My reputation, I played 50 characters in my 2 shows in Unemployed and
wow.
Infertile. So I'm kind of known as like the character actor for solo.
Yeah.
And so I want to start doing in-person workshops to keep training people on what it looks like to be the only person on stage and play 14 characters. Because
Yeah.
there's some very simple physical things and vocal things you can do to bring a cast of characters to life. And it's so much fun when you discover it in yourself. So as an
Yeah.
actor, that's wildly fulfilling too, because I'm not
Yeah.
going to get to play a lot of these people. I don't get to play a
No.
drill instructor probably, but I do in my show.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
The character work is so fun. At Second City, I took a class with, I think it's like Con 102 or whatever, like the conservatory, the second level 2
Yeah.
of the conservatory is based on characters. And I had Celeste Pecus as my teacher, and she's incredible. She's, if you haven't watched Work in Progress, go watch it. She's great. She plays Campbell. And one of the days she had us like figure out a character just by like focusing on a part of the body, which was like so great. And it like I came up, like, I just like, I think it was like I had like adjusted my neck, and then it was like, oh, I became this old lady, and it was so fun.
It's so much fun. That's one of my biggest tricks. I'm like, the first thing you got to do is find out, where does the weight of their body live and why? Because if you find that, if you find your posture impacted by where they carry their weight and the way that they move and what their posture is, all of a sudden it's amazing how people's facial expression changes, their voice comes out different. Like, so that's one of my favorite access points, is finding something in your body, and we do things like, if this person was this character, if it was an animal, what would the energy of the animal be? And that has different things show up. And I mean, it's so much fun. The character work is like my favorite part. And people get intimidated. And I always tell them, listen, when I sat down with Jessica for my first show, I'd seen just enough solo to know that some people were doing characters. And I was like, I am not a character actor. I cannot do this. We have to find a way to tell this story another way.
Yeah.
And she'd go, okay, I know it's kind of overwhelming. So let's just keep writing and see where we get. That's what she would do. Let's just keep writing and see where we get. Well, in that show, I ended up playing 39 characters. So that's where we got. But I
Yeah.
didn't know I could. So I always tell people, like, you might be surprised how much play you still have in you that you forgot that you have. And that
Yeah.
if you start to be in this situation and use your body and your voice and your face to find new expression, you might be shocked that you are a character actor in waiting. You just didn't know it.
Yeah. Well, I can recommend go babysit somebody's like little kids, or if you have kids of your own, go play with your own kids. And like all of a sudden, like you realize, like, oh, I'm improvising. Oh, I'm doing character work right now because
And
you're,
they yes and like
yeah,
crazy. Those little guys, they
yeah,
yes and like crazy. They just go with it. They just go
yeah.
with it.
It's so funny. The classic thing that we always hear, like the kids say, like, okay, pretend that da 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 da. Okay, now pretend that da 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 da. You know? That's just acting.
That's just acting. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think also when you were talking about the show where they talked about coming out, their
Oh, Rebecca.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebecca's show. It's so important to have those voices in the media as well. Like, it's really refreshing to hear that the solo shows can bring all those voices to light. And then it just goes to show that how important it is to have those voices in media, because that's how people see others' experiences and open up to those possibilities. You're talking about the people apologizing to her for like not seeing things, or like you realize that you thought you were an ally and you realize like how much further you can go. I think so much of what's happening these days with the diversity that we're seeing
Mhm.
in television, in movies, but then also on social media, people are talking about it. We start to realize like where the gap is and where we're lacking, and how you think you understand something and you think that by doing whatever steps you're doing, you're being a supporter. And you quickly realize when you get a better picture from their own voice, and when they like are so specific about their experience, you see like where the gaps are.
Yep. And that's why I love working with my artists. Like there's a young man, his name is Kevin Neighbors, one of the most gifted trained actors I've ever worked with. His story, versatile, is unbelievable. He's a half black, half white man who's gay, who came out of the foster care system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And was
That's
adopted
intense.
by two white parents that ended up getting divorced.
Oh,
And it ended up separated from his sister, who was also in foster care. Like, and you hear, if you met Kevin, he's such a jovial, funny, smart, kind person.
mhm.
You know, there's so much you would take for granted and assume about him. And then in his show, again, it was another place where my empathy in the conversation of race just got exploded open,
Yeah.
hearing what it was like for him to be mixed.
Yeah.
And as again, somebody who, since I was a kid, was all about, civil rights and,
Yeah.
love sees no color and all of this stuff, right? Like I
Yeah.
thought I knew something, and I feel, and that's one of the things I'm so grateful for here, because here I am, I'm almost 50. And the fact that I'm still learning at the level I am what other human experience is like, and getting access to these such distinct points of view that I could never, from my own experience, actually assume to understand. You
Yeah.
just can't. You can
Yeah.
generalize, you can categorize, but you can't really walk in their shoes. Not really.
Yeah.
But experiencing these storytellers and hearing them be so authentic and so engaged with their own sharing, it really is, it's a gift, really, what they're doing, because they don't have to. They're putting themselves up at issue. They're putting up themselves up for criticism and judgment,
Mhm.
and in some cases attack, literally. So they're
Yeah.
putting themselves at issue in service of creating a bridge and creating understanding. It gets misinterpreted as trying to like force somebody to think something or feel some way. I don't think that's true at all. The stories I've seen, at least in the community I'm a part of, it's just a genuine sharing from their own experience, and hoping that it leaves people with a new understanding and experience that they can take with them.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, it's just so important that those are the kind of stories that are getting told.
Yeah. Well, the goal is to tell your story, and how it affects you is on you. That's on the, like, you're not responsible for how the audience interprets that or takes it in, or how it affects them the next day. All you did was tell your story. It's the same thing in anything in life, right? Like other
Right.
people's reaction are not your responsibility.
100%.
You know, we can move forward with kindness and empathy and compassion and all that. And we should. But
Yeah.
one person's reaction is kind of like, okay, well, then maybe you need to process something on your own,
100%. Yeah. And that's why, I always tell my artists that I'm like, listen, you've found the courage to do this. And it's just like you said, it's not your responsibility how it lands, because I know your intention. I know you
Yeah.
examined every line of this script, every word on the delivery, every venue that you booked. You thought about all of this stuff. So you're delivering an
Yeah.
intention, and whether or not it lands over there the way you expected, no way to know.
Yeah.
No way to know. So I know where you're
Yeah.
coming from. You know where you're coming from, and then we'll see what happens. And overall, it's been an absolutely extraordinary experience. And I feel like I've learned more. Gosh, in these past 4 years, I feel like I've grown more as a person in my ability to empathize and my want to understand than I ever would
Mhm.
have dreamed. Because you have this ridiculous idea that the older you get, the wiser you get. That's so funny to me. Like, oh, you're so
Yeah.
wise. I'm like, am I? Am I? Or am I
Yeah.
just now aged enough to know that I don't know? So it's
Yeah.
kind of
I think
almost the
that's a big part
opposite.
of it.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I'm actually more curious and questioning more than I ever have,
Yeah.
because the more my experience it piles up, it keeps showing me what I don't know, not what I
Yeah.
do know. So yeah, I know a lot of stuff. I've had like I said, a lot of jobs, and now a decade in this business. So I got
Yes.
some miles on me there too. But there's I just keep discovering more of what I don't know, and more of where I need to grow and push my edges. And even when we're talking about this strike stuff, like being responsible for being a part of the community called SAG after actors, and
Mhm.
that it's that I can't just look up and say, oh, the big people at the top are taking care of me. Guess what? No, they're not. If you're going to be a part of this community, you got to engage, and you have to understand how to take care of, yes, you, but also this community you're a part of, that's trying to make sure that they don't get taken advantage of because they are dreaming of something. Like
Yeah.
they're not getting, misused because they have a want that's so strong, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like at every corner I feel like I'm being pressed to grow up more. Not
Yeah.
like I've actually arrived any place.
I'd like to think, I mean, my kind of dream is like, if the studios don't want to come to the table the way that they should, that someone with a lot of money is going to start a mini studio, and all those great stories are going to start. I mean, hey, the quality may not be there quite yet, but we can do a lot with a little, like,
Well, I mean, the
and
early
like when I say
talkies were
someone
not
with a lot
great.
of money, like you still have to have like, like hundreds of millions of dollars to start something like that. But
Yeah, you never know. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I'm very curious to see how it's all gonna
yeah,
play out.
yeah. Well, it's something that you said that I also wanted to comment on is about the age. Is like you
Mm,
said, like I feel like I am learning so much more now, and sometimes I feel like I'm just starting to learn.
that's
Because I
yeah.
think like when we're in our 20s and 30s, like you said, you think and when you get to like your late 30s and like 40s, you really start to realize, oh, I don't know. And so I think something about that kind of opens up your brain so much more. And so like now you're actually learning. I learned so much in college, but honestly, like I don't remember so much of it. I'm always so impressed when people can like talk about like the Greek mythology plays that we read and like Shakespeare. I'm like, I know I took that theater history class, but I don't know how much of it I retained.
Boy, that's the truth. And it's oh yeah, I've probably forgotten more than I've learned. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated? Because, you did get a late start and then you had to like do all that training in your 40s, and now you've built this thing with a solo career, and like we know the grind. They say it takes 10 years, and I feel like even though I've been out here since I was 22, 23, I wasn't really like trying to work in the way that I should have for a number of reasons. And it, like since I don't know, 4 years ago or 5 years, I'm losing track of time. I've been actually like have representation, know how to work with my representation, know what's expected of me, and like actually trying to work. And so I'm looking at this like, oh gosh, I might not book my first, legit role until I'm 50. What keeps you motivated? And like sometimes that feels really daunting. So what keeps you going?
Well, so first I want to address what you were saying because, when I came out of the gate, just like I said to my brother, like, are you insane? I'm 39 years old. I'm going to start this now.
Yeah.
But I have to be honest that sometimes I think that was no, I don't sometimes. I know that that's how, one, it had to happen for me
Yeah.
because this is my journey and that's what that looks like,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
But also, I had so much to bring to bear. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I had so many experiences of life that when I'm breaking down scripts or when I'm looking at different characters or I'm looking at different moments, there's an awful lot of life that I lived through all of those years and all of those jobs and all those relationships and all the places I lived that I could bring with me into the conversation. So even though I wasn't training in acting necessarily, there was an awful lot I had loaded in the barrel, right? And then
You were
the other
trading in emotional intelligence.
exactly, that's a perfect way to put it. And the other part is I had run and managed businesses a lot.
Yeah.
And I had been in sales a lot. So it didn't come as a surprise to me that I had to figure out how to work as a self-employed person. Like I knew what it meant to create a work week where I was responsible for certain things and making sure that I was keeping track of the casting directors I met and making sure to always send thank you notes and keeping track of like what was happening with breakdowns and handling my headshots and price shopping, all that stuff, and comparing casting, like what was a real pay for play thing and which ones were legit casting that wanted to connect and were like trying to empower, like because it's different. It's different.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the business part was easy for me because I'd been running businesses and managing employees and doing stuff like that for a long time. So that wasn't daunting. So it was almost like I just had to catch up the years of creativity that I didn't get to express.
Yeah.
And I think doing all the work in solo, doing, the other training that I did, I found so many great classes. I got really lucky. I know sometimes people end up places that can be, and at least what's been reported to me, be kind of destructive in taking away creativity. But I feel like I got so lucky that everywhere I landed, I was constantly fed and empowered, even at starting late, and given what I needed to keep going. So now if you ask me what keeps me going now, that is an evolving question every day because I love my solo actors, as you can hear, and I love writing, but there is nothing like being on set. For me, being on set is like, when it comes down to it, that's where I want to be. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to let go of that attachment and then continue to practice my craft and the game of being an actor when and if ever that comes. And the way that I do it, I was talking about it earlier, part of it's community. Part of it is that I'm in conversations with other actors that are not whining about how hard it is, that are not complaining about, how unfair it is, that are not, because I get enough of that already. Like at the surface level, I get that all the time. So I need my closest ones to be the ones that are saying, we're going to figure this out, being encouraging, helping each other work together, helping each other tape auditions, helping each other solve a complicated blocking thing where they're asking you to, resuscitate a dead body on a self-tape or whatever it is, right? Like, so surrounding myself with really good people, that's part of it. Continuing to surrender to, because I really do believe that there's not boxes that you check to achieve, co-stars, and then you get to guest star, and then you get to whatever, and then someday you get your big. It's not like promotions in a job. It's not how it goes. How people end up succeeding in this business is a completely different path for everyone. So I believe investing in these artists that I care about and helping them to tell their stories, continuing to coach them in that, continuing to write my own stuff. You probably saw that I wrote a comedy pilot with an accountability partner that was one of these actors, right? We created a comedy series with Tom Bergeron and James Lejeune, and we funded the whole thing and found a production company, the most incredible guys, Drama 3-4, who were friends with my brother-in-law, Tim, David Fickus and Bryce Beckham. And they fleshed out the scripts for us and we made our own stuff. And, so it's like, as intimidating as it is, continuing to take on other things and then trusting and believing that if there's something out there that's meant for me that I can't control, it will come. But it's going to come
Yeah.
how it comes. It's not going to come because I force it. It's not going to come because I do certain things in a certain order. There's not some chant that I can do that's going to have it fall into place. I'm just going to keep honoring what calls me creatively, what feels like it's of service to me and to other people, and where the truest expression of my creativity can show up. And then we'll see. Because that has probably been the hardest thing for me is when I got my first co-star during the shutdown. I got my first co-star on TV during the pandemic on This Is Us. And This Is Us was my like at the time, there was no contest. My favorite show without a doubt, right? I thought for sure the minute I booked that co-star, because up until then it felt like that was the lid, that I hadn't booked a network co-star, and that was the reason that nothing was moving, right?
Yeah.
I thought that my life was going to take off after that I was going to be on set all of the time and do all of the shows. I have not been back on set for anything since.
Oh.
Well, that's not true. I was on set for my friend's independent film, which I'm really excited about, but I have not been called back on any TV or streaming to perform. I've had lots of auditions and callbacks, but I haven't had any of that. So
yeah,
it's, I feel like I'm so off track because the question was, how do you keep yourself going?
Yeah.
And I guess this is the longest possible answer to that question, is just to say, I have to figure it out every day. To be honest, I have to figure that out every day. What am I going to do today to feed my artistry? What am I going to do today to keep my head straight? I finally got into a practice. There's a great community online called Actors Who Get It with Asia Ray Coleman. And I also love DeJuan Johnson, the Think Bigger tribe. I love them because I got into a practice of meditation and gratitude journaling every day, because I know that one of the most important things is I have to have my head straight in the morning to start. Because otherwise all the things I could do or should do or want to do and don't want to do just occur as too overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things you can focus on. So that's become a practice that I think has made a difference in always reminding me every day, what's for you is for you. Keep doing authentically what feels of service to your creativity and to people that you care about. And then we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
I think that's great. And I think that that's a similar thing that I've been hearing a lot lately. Even Sam Valentine of One Broke Actress, I think it was at the beginning of the year, she was kind of not, I won't say poking, but taking down the idea of like, this is going to be my year. And she's like, this is not going to be your year. Don't go into it with that mentality. It's not going to be your year. Every year is the year that you're taking steps towards your career, whatever it is. And there's no like finish line.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It's going to move. It's always going to move. So like the whole, this is going to be your year thing really kind of sets you up for failure, right?
Completely. Because it puts this idea that there's some first of all, we've learned in this business, the longer you've been around it, you don't arrive.
No.
You might book something huge, and guess what? That doesn't mean anything either.
Yeah.
I mean, people, the way this thing evolves and moves, things can happen so fast. You can book a pilot, and it doesn't even make it to the air. So if you thought that was your year because you booked a pilot, well, is it now not your year because it got canceled? Like, what is that? So I love Sam, and I remember hearing that podcast and being like cheering on the other end, going, oh, right. And the other thing to me is like, no, every year is your year.
Yeah.
You're the one who gets to say how you're going to spend it. Now, do you get to say you're going to be on TV? No, but you also get to say who you're going to be about that. So what are you going to spend your time on? Who are you going to spend it with? How are you going to grow yourself? That's how you know if it's your year or not, because you're taking ownership of it. And the results will be what they are. And that's where, people, they keep collapsing the model of the entertainment industry, trying to have it match what like an educational trajectory is, or what a professional trajectory is, of where I get the job and I get promoted, or I get different degrees and I elevate up. And by the way, the job world isn't like that anymore either. If you really examine your friends that work in normal jobs, there's nothing predictable about a normal trajectory of promotions or upgrades, or that doesn't exist either. That's all an illusion of
Yeah.
a previous time that isn't anymore.
Yeah.
So in our business, then to take that expectation on is even crazier because it's never been built like that. So, it's the daily practice of recentering yourself, making choices about what you want to do, and also being okay quitting, by the way. I
Yeah.
think that's another thing too, is like, it's completely legitimate. Just like I changed paths at 39, there's no reason that if somebody's been acting since they were 23 and they went to school for all of it and they are finding that there is no joy in it for them anymore, guess what? You're not dead yet. You can do
Yeah.
something else. This is not the only thing there is. And I
Yeah.
think people sometimes surprise themselves with what they can discover if they're willing to look. Like, I just started taking on, it's brand new to me. We're talking like 4 months, but I've made a decision that I'm going to jump into audiobook narration.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it's necessarily going to be any easier than acting,
Yeah.
but it seems to have a little bit more of a, I don't know, like more of a path to get on and to get into, a groove you can get into.
Yeah.
And I was like, that could be really great. One
Yeah.
of the things I did, because I'm a multiple sclerosis patient, have been
Okay.
for a long time. Happy to say that I'm incredibly healthy. Thank you, Lord, for that. And
Yeah.
I started thinking about aging, especially because I'm coming
Yeah.
up on 50, right? So my brain's like working on this. So I
Yeah.
can't wait. I want to be the grandma. I'm ready for that. I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
But I also thought, as I get older, I might have more issues with ability. I might have more issues with energy and things like that. And being on set is incredibly demanding. So
Yeah.
although that's where I want to be and everybody knows it, I also, how great would it be, as long as I can see, knock on wood, and as long as I can talk, I can keep performing. I can keep bringing stories to life. I can characters to life in a
Yeah.
storytelling way with audiobooks. So that's the new thing I've taken on. So talk about learning something. Remember how I said I just keep finding out how much I don't know?
Yeah.
It was like a whole new language, like figuring out what I needed for equipment, what I needed for sound dampening, what I needed for recording. Like, I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh, I'm sure that when you took on the podcast, you're like, holy cow, this is so much.
Well, even before I started the podcast, I was trying to do audiobooks too. And you're right, it's not easy either. Like I submitted to so many different things on ACX, and I'd always get like, "Oh, we loved your tape, but we ended up going with somebody else."
You're
Like,
like, this
I'm
sounds
like,
familiar. Wait,
all
where have I
right.
heard this
And then,
before?
I mean, hey, at least I'd get a response sometimes, right? You
Mhm.
don't get that in acting. But yeah, I ended up getting to the point where it just wasn't, I ended up needing to get income sooner. So
Well, yeah, and
I
you have a
went,
little one,
yeah,
and you got a kiddo too.
yeah,
You got more responsibility on your
yeah.
plate, lady.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd love to do the audiobooks. I think that sounds great, but like I think I also decided for me, like especially with ACX, because you have to edit it yourself and like send it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I give up, I'm done. But then here I am doing a podcast where I edit everything all by
It's
myself. But it
so
actually,
hard.
what was great was it prepped me for the podcast because I had gotten so used to editing my auditions and putting those together and then like VO auditions. So when it came to doing the podcast, I was like, oh, I can do this. This is easy. Like I got it.
See?
Yeah.
It actually put you in a place where you could put everything you went through with that set you up for this. And
Yeah.
I think that is how that goes. So I just keep trusting it. I'm like, maybe the only reason I'm learning audiobooks is because I'm meant to do voiceover and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And this is just
Yeah.
going to be my entry point. Or maybe I'm supposed to have a podcast someday about infertility or about, deciding being a crazy person is starting to act when you're already in your 40s or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Um,
Yeah.
so no, that one's already taken. That's right. You're doing that one.
Yeah, that's this one.
But yeah,
I figured you'd figured it out.
you're landing where you needed to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's perfect. And again, it's not that the work was different, right? Like you had to learn all the same things, but it's
Yeah.
interesting how when it's a fit for your creative expression and it's something that really calls to you, the work gets a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Or more interesting at the very least. It's like you're more motivated to take it on. And so I think you got to trust that you just get put where you're supposed to be. And I do not like people hear me say that and they're like, so you think everything's predestined and you have no choices? I'm like, no.
No.
For me, it occurs like I am always in partnership with something way bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, God is very real for me. And to me,
Yeah.
I'm always in partnership with something so much bigger with so many more resources and so many more openings and connections than I can even fathom having. that if
Yeah.
I keep taking one step at a time toward the things I say I want, and I keep behaving consistent with what I say I want, that
Yeah.
those openings will come. And because I mean, if you had told 15-year-old Heather, who was dying to go to performing arts school and wasn't seeing how that was ever going to happen, if you had said that she'd write 2 award-winning one-person shows that she'd do on stage, one of them off
Yeah.
Broadway in New York, if you had
Oh my
told her that
gosh.
she was going to create a comedy series with 2 pretty big well, I don't know if you would call Tom a movie star, but he's the star of everything in my mind. He's the sweetest man in the world, that have
Yeah.
2 big stars on it, and including Leonora Pitts, who I know is one of your
Yes.
favorite humans, one of
Yes.
my favorite humans too.
Yes. Yes.
So if you had told me that, and then you had told me that I would be getting paid to coach other people in an acting capacity and help them write and tell stories, she would have just been crying with happiness. She was like,
Yeah.
"How did you do it?" And how
Yeah.
the heck would I have answered that? I'd be like, "Well, it took, more than 35 jobs, and it was because I married a guy who
Yeah.
wanted to go to California, and then there was, like, it's
I think,
not a straight line."
yeah, and I think that's just it. The thing that I'm trying to embrace and understand more and more is that, like, it's never going to look the way that you thought it was going to look. Like the path to the goals that you're trying to get, you don't get to decide that narrative. You don't get to control how it's all going to happen. It's going to happen how it's going to happen. And the more you just like let go of that control, the better. I like, just kind of listening to your intuition. Okay, well, I'm going to take this job, or I'm going to reach out to this person. Um, Finding my guest for the podcast is very much like that.
I bet.
Where like I'll see someone on Instagram, or someone will message me or whatever, and I'm like, I'm going to look at this person a little bit, or like something about them is interesting. I'm not really sure if they're the right fit, but then I'll like start to look down the list. And there's other people where like the ping doesn't go off, but some people the ping will go off. And so then I just kind of say like, okay, well, let me just explore this avenue and see who they are. And it's funny how many times when I do that, I realize like, oh, we have so many other connections.
Yeah.
And that was just like that little guide guiding me,
Mhm.
And I think even with this podcast, like the bigger picture of this podcast is that I've met so many incredible people who have inspired me personally to keep going, but who also I could potentially work with down the road.
That's
Or,
right.
like some guests have been like, hey, like, let me help you with your headshots. Like, let me help you like clean up your actor's access. Just little things like that, where they're willing to give me half an hour of their time to help me get to that next step that I'm trying to get to.
So
And that's
great.
been incredible.
Yeah, it's so great. And sometimes it takes courage. Like for you to have taken this on takes a lot of courage. There are a lot of podcasts. There are a lot of people talking about acting. There's a lot of people talking about getting old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But one of the things my coach, Dwan Johnson, one of my favorite things he says is like, if you get that tickle of something you want to do and it's scaring you, but you have that, we are talking about that ping, you get that like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And he goes, really, when it comes down to it, it takes 30 seconds of insane courage. Because it's one email that'll take you 30 seconds to write. It's one phone call that will take you 30 seconds to dial. It's what he's like. So that's all you got to get past is those first 30 seconds. Because then once it gets into motion, you'll know if you're on the right track and you can get into action on it. Right. And so that's whenever I'm having one of those, like you're talking about looking at the names of your guests, whenever I'm thinking about, like, it sounds ridiculous, but I was on the picket line and we ran into Jason Sudeikis, and then there was something I really wanted to say to him on Twitter about how much I loved him being there. Right.
Yeah.
And part of me was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I heard Dawn in my head, like 30 seconds, insane courage, because where it was coming from was a genuine place. Like, I admire you. I appreciate you. Now, anything going to happen? Probably. I mean, 1 in a billion. He even sees it. His assistant will be like, hey, somebody said something nice about you. Right. Like that's the extent of it. But it's just, you just don't know if you trust that ping and you exercise 30 seconds of insane courage and you take action toward, worst case scenario, you learn something new. And best case scenario, it's a step closer to, where you said you want to go. Right.
Yeah.
I think.
And either way, you step through something fearful and you're a little bit brave today. And I think that's like huge. Every time you like step through that like little bit of fear and do it anyway, Like it makes you a little more brave and a little more brave. Like there's people that I've reached out to on the podcast who I thought like, oh yeah, they're total no-brainers. Like they're not like huge mega stars. Like they've had like recurring roles or like they do like guest star roles from time to time. And I've, like maybe I'm a fan of their podcast or whatever. And I've reached out to them
Right.
and crickets. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess move on, and then there's other people who I reached out to who I think have similar careers and they totally get back to me. But the reality is I can make up a story like, oh, they think they're too good for me. They probably didn't even see the message. That's probably the reality of it all.
I'm thinking about how many unreturned emails I have in my email box right now, like how far behind I am catching up with people. And like, who knows who is in my inbox right now thinking, wow, I guess she didn't like me as much as I thought, or I guess she just didn't care what I'm dealing with. Like I'm going to have to clean that up tomorrow because now I'm worried about folks. But yeah, it's amazing how, but every time you take that act of courage, it feeds on itself for sure. And it gets easier every time, And that was a real lesson
easier.
when we got Tom on our show. So by downthemiddleseries.com, you can watch it online. It's a 55-minute comedy pilot. But I just remember when my friends were suggesting that we offer this one role to him. And I was like, that is never going to happen. I was like, that's never going to happen. I'm no one. He's not going to, this is insane.
Yeah.
And it just happened that he had a relationship with my friend, Jennifer Clymer, who's a producer at the Motion Picture Television Fund, who has done fundraisers with him. And then it turned out that the director, who was also do writing, David Fickus, he was friends with a woman who was really good friends with Tom. And so he kind of got pinchered, and that this side said, hey, Tom, my friend's working on this really funny script. They have a role. I think you'd be great. Would you ever be up for that? And at the same time, hey, Tom, my friend Leslie, we got this project. They think you'd be great for it. And he was like, okay. Now
that's awesome.
Who would have thunk it? Like in a million years. But it's again 30 seconds of insane courage of saying, "Hey Tom, I have a friend who is writing something thinking you'd be perfect." It's life is so funny. It's just so funny. And that's the other one that was going to make it, right? Like, oh, this is it. I've got a show with Tom Bergeron. Now everything's going to fall into place. And we even laughed about it. I mean, we have so much fun even talking about it, how crazy this business is and how random it can be, the ups and downs of it. So
it really can be so random. Even like, I'll make this quick because I want to get to our other questions. I know we're running out of time, but we were talking about your year, right? And these projects don't happen within like a year, often a certain timeline. So one of my good friends, and he's on episode 3 of the podcast, Ron Song, he shot Jury Duty in 2020. Wow. And like, so he's been like doing other, co-star stuff here and there. And it finally came out and it's taken off and it's this huge thing. And now he performed at Dynasty Typewriter last night. And that's he's awesome. Having like, so was 2020 his year when he shot it, or is this his year when it's released? And he's, like he hasn't filmed anything else that I know of this year, but like technically when he booked it and shot it, that was 3 years ago. So
it's crazy. Yeah. That's and we have. I mean, it's first of all, my friend Brandon Loser is a part of that show too, and I'm so happy for him because he's such a good human.
Oh yeah. He's in it in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got white hair. He's like a young guy, but he's got white hair. Yeah. So I guess
he like has a moment where he part of his setup is that he's one of the original jurors, and then he like falls and gets injured, and so then they have to replace him, and it's like a big dramatic thing.
Yeah, the thing like what is your year? Is it the year that he shot it, or is it the year that it's now getting all this publicity? And we have actually Down the Middle is in the hands again of some producers that are like, maybe we want a workplace comedy. And you got to understand, we finished shooting this in 2019, right before the pandemic, and everything shut down. But we started writing it 4 years before. I mean, this thing has been, a long time coming. So I guess if it sells, it'll be our year. Or was it the year that we got Tom, or was it the year? I don't know. I don't know what.
Yeah. Because these things are just like evolving all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to ask, because we'll need to wrap it up. I want to ask you the question that I ask everybody is what advice would you have for somebody who's coming up now in their career, or maybe like you, they decide to make a shift in their middle age?
Well, if they were young, so if they were like the young version of me and they were starting to look at this, I would say develop a skill set for yourself outside of this.
Hmm.
Because if you put everything on this creative business as the thing to sustain you, one, it puts an expectation on it that is going to be crushing. And two,
Yeah.
it has a weird way of sucking the life out of the actual fun play and adventure of it. So
Yeah.
develop another side by side skill set, something that you're good at, that you like to do, that you can imagine that when you're not on set, when you're not taping an audition, you can be satisfied doing that and find a way to support yourself. And I don't care if you're in LA or New York, I don't care where you are, anywhere in the country that they're shooting, have something else that you're good at. And especially if you can find something that, maybe ask yourself the question, like, let's just pretend for a minute it's completely off the table and I absolutely can never do this kind of a career. I can't do the creative thing.
Yeah.
What would you do instead? And maybe develop that, because I have a lot of friends that they love their side gig as much as they love their performing, because all
Yeah.
they're honoring are things they love to do, whether it's in performance and this, this business, creative business, or not.
Yeah.
And then as far as somebody getting started at my age, I think the biggest thing is you do have to acknowledge that you are going to have other people that are your same age but have been at it a long time that are bringing more
Hmm.
credits and more experience to the party, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not bringing something unique, that when people see it, they love it. It just means that you have the resume of a 20 something, even though you're a 40 something,
Yeah.
and to be at peace with that was the choice you made. So then your job, I think, is to bring the rich, varied history of your life that you've lived so far, find a way to share that story. Maybe it's a one-person show. Maybe it's writing a play for other people. Maybe it's
Hmm.
shooting a once-a-week episode on a YouTube series. But find a way to bring the richness of the life you've lived up to now out of your creative self, so that it can live in the world and people can get to know you and begin to identify you as a unique voice for your particular generation, your age, the place you are, right? Because there's no two alike. No matter how much experience
Yeah.
somebody has, they're not you. And you can fill a unique spot on all kinds of sets and creative spaces. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because there's only one of you.
Oh, I like that so much.
Yeah. And be kind with
I,
yourself. Be patient with yourself.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. Okay. So, what does making it mean to you now versus when you were younger? So, what does success look like to you?
I knew you were going to ask me this, and it still flummoxes me. Well, because I don't know if that's even the right use of the word flummoxed, but it's like, it's this, the, what does success look like to me? Success to me is being able to recalibrate every day and know that the way that I'm spending my time, my money, and my energy is consistent with a life that I want to create. And then it might
Hmm.
not look like I imagine it could look. It might not look like it looked yesterday, but that I am honoring what I said that I want to create with my life. And there's not some place where I'm dishonoring my authentic expression to get by. Right. And it doesn't mean I still don't
Yeah.
have to do laundry, and there's still dishes that got to be washed and things like that. But it's like,
Yeah.
on the whole, my life is moving in the direction of the things that mean the most to me, or that I want the most, or that I'm determined to create for myself. Even if I never get there, I'm glad that that's how I'm spending my time. So to me, that's the success part of it, because the rest of it, the variables, we just don't have control over it. So if I
Yeah.
say that success is when I'm a series regular, well, then I just gave that away to
Yeah.
a huge statistical game that
Yeah.
has to do with so many variables that I have this much, very, very little to say about. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's as each day a reflection of what I really care about and the direction I want to be moving in.
Yeah. It sounds like for you, success is the journey and how you live that journey. It's
Yeah.
not the destination.
Yeah. I mean, and I always, when I'm miserable, I know I've forgotten that.
Yeah.
When I feel miserable, it's because I forgot that this is it. And how I live this is my life. And that I think that there's somewhere I'm supposed to be that's where I'm really headed and what's really supposed to be happening. And then that's where the upset comes from.
Yeah.
So that's always my clue, is if I'm really unhappy, then I know I'm not grounded in who I am now and what I'm up to now.
Yeah. Heather, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so much
I
fun
think
talking to you. I was like, wow, I went places I wasn't even thinking about.
I know. You know what? And like I promised you I'd have you out by 1:15 and we're at 1:20. So I'm sorry
Okay.
about that.
I haven't gotten
But I
that
think
call, so it's on them.
yeah, and I think I must be getting better at this because my interviews have been getting longer. Whereas like sometimes I would usually find the sweet spot around like 50 minutes to 1 hour, and like lately it's like I don't know, I'm just having so much fun and I'm like I know I need to wrap it up, but
I just
gosh,
feel
dang it.
sorry. I feel bad because I know that you're going to have to edit so much stuff because I went on so many screwy tangents.
Oh, it's been so lovely getting to know you, and like I said, we could have talked forever. So
I know.
thank
I
you
love it.
again.
I love it. I could seriously. Well, next time, just coffee and chatting, and that's what it'll be.
Yeah. Yes.
All right,
yeah.
Lisa. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. You can follow Heather on Instagram at saysheather, SAYS Heather, and check out her series Down the Middle, which you can find a link to on heatherdowling.com. Also, if you're interested in creating your own solo show and need a little support, check out Soaring Solo Studios. All of this is linked in the show notes, so it's nice and easy for you. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. And please share the show with your friends. Please share the show with your friends. Let's get it out there, my friends. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at Making It After 40, the number 40. And to catch up on what I'm doing when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Thank you all for listening and have an excellent week.